You're listening to Southeast Radio's Business Matters, with thanks to Wexford Insurances. Wexford Insurances. More information at wexfordinsurance.com.
My first interview this morning is with Orlaith Carmody, Director of Media Training.ie. Good morning, Orla, and thank you for joining me.
Hi, Karl. Pleasure to be here.
Orla, I know that the reason you're in Wexford this weekend is because you have an upcoming presentation in association with Wexford County Enterprise Board next Wednesday. Can you tell me a little bit about that, please?
Yes, I was delighted to be invited by Wexford County Enterprise Board to speak at their women's networking event. And what I'll be doing is I'll be talking particularly about pitching for business. I call my presentation Life's a Pitch because I think we are all pitching all the time in life, whether you're standing at that bar chatting up that girl, or whether you're pitching to your bank manager looking for support for your business idea, or whether you're pitching to the County Enterprise Board for, say, a feasibility study grant, or you're pitching to a customer. We are all pitching all the time in business, and it's something we've got to do well.
Tell me a little bit about your own background, please.
Well, I started in journalism. I graduated in journalism quite a number of years ago, and I worked in the print media for a while. And then I moved into local radio. I started off with LMFM, the local radio station in the North East region. And from there I moved to RTE. I was in RTE throughout the 90s. I was a staff reporter. I worked on programmes like The Week in Politics and Oireachtas Report. I kind of specialised in the political area. And moving on from that then, I suppose I began to develop a lot of business interests. My husband is Gavin Duffy, who'll be known to some of you, of the Dragon's Den, and our company, Media Training. We work with clients and companies in the whole area of communications, training and development. I began to build up my business interests throughout that period. And so when I left RTE, I think 1999, to spend time with my family. I had 4 young kids at that time, but I also had my business interests moving along nicely at that time, and our own company was developing and growing. So in recent years, that's what my main occupation is, if you like. It's running my company, Media Training, and working with companies in this whole area of presenting, working with the media. And, you know, for example, if you have a CEO who wants to go out and speak at a conference or has to speak at a conference in front of 300 of his peers, that's a hard ask for some people. Public speaking is rated sometimes as one of the top 10 fears. And, you know, to work with people on making a really good presentation in front of their colleagues, because your colleagues, as you know, are very hard taskmasters and hard judges. So that's our day job. But in recent years, we've spread into the whole area of product development and brand development and bringing small companies to market because of Gavin's involvement, obviously, with the Dragon's Den in the last 3 years.
Just in relation to people fearing public speaking, from your experience, what's the reason for that?
Well, I suppose the fear is the fear of being caught out, the fear of drying up. It's just this rush of nerves and not knowing how to handle it or what to do with it. And I often describe the rush of nerves you get before you stand up and make a pitch or make a presentation as you have to see that as the cavalry arriving. You know, to this is the cavalry coming over the hills to help you. So embrace that sweaty palm or that feeling of nerves or jitteriness. If you just acknowledge that is there to help me, it's there for me to use, it doesn't become a major obstacle. You know, if you imagine a wonderful singer standing up on a stage to sing, if they tell you they're not nervous before they start, they're a liar. We all get nervous, even those of us who do public speaking as part of our job every day of the week. You get nervous, but you know how to use those nerves and you know how to channel that big adrenaline rush and turn it into the energy, the performance energy that'll give you the edge.
I know your presentation is called Life's a Pitch on Wednesday in the Kilcannon Garden Centre. What can people expect to hear on the day?
Well, things like the sort of the central tools you need to think about when you're making a pitch. I call it RSVP. If you can remember, Responde s'il vous plaît, RSVP. And that is rapport, style, vision and passion. And there's some of the key tools you need to think about when making a pitch. And by rapport, I mean connecting with your audience and really establishing what it is your audience wants to hear, as opposed to starting your presentation or your pitch with, oh, I'm going to tell them this and this and this. And I've all my stuff planned to say, and I haven't paused to say, well, actually, what do they want to hear? So you have to build that rapport with the audience. And one of the ways you build rapport with the audience is by looking at them and really eyeballing them and connecting with them and smiling at them and seeing, are they smiling back and nodding and hearing and listening to what you're saying and giving you back all those signals. And you can't do that if you're not looking at them, if you're hiding behind slides. I was working with a client recently who's a very high-end multimillionaire. You'd know his name, and he was going over to present a big presentation presentation in China. And he said to me, all excitedly, I've got 78 slides on my deck. And I felt like saying, well, it's not how big your deck is. This is not how this thing works. Because if he has 78 slides to get through in a 10-15 minute talk, how can he possibly be looking at his audience and really connecting with them? Because he's going to be all tangled up in getting through these 78 slides. So rapport with the audience is one of the key things.
I know there's a phrase out there today called death by PowerPoint. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. We can kill people with PowerPoint. We can kill people by putting up bullet points all over the place. Bullet points and slides and graphs and charts and diagrams, and people are cross-eyed trying to look at these things. Sometimes your communication can be just so much more powerful if you forget the PowerPoint altogether, or if you really feel you need it. Maybe I would use 10, 12 slides in a 45-minute talk, and the only thing on those slides would be a picture and one or two words, very, very little. And all they are is a visual to make people smile, to make them really engage with what I'm saying, because what I really want them to do is listen to me and hear my message. I don't want them to be locked into deciphering these hieroglyphics up on the wall. So use PowerPoint very sparingly, I would say. Used well, it's powerful and it's effective. Used badly, and so many people use it badly, it's disastrous.
What advice would you give to people that do suffer from nerves in advance of making a presentation?
I would ask them to think about planning their presentation or their pitch really, really well. And the way you plan that, as I said, is starting with the audience. What does the audience want to hear? And if you imagine looking at your audience and they're all looking up at you and you're having that Bottler moment where Bottler used to say, "Yous is all looking at me." And if you imagine that great big spotlight, if it's turning in on you and you're all hung up with how you're speaking, what your accent is like, your ums and your ahs, the outfit you're wearing, should you've picked the red tie or the green tie, if you're concentrating on all of that, how can you possibly be concentrating on the message and getting it across to that audience? And nervousness, I think, can be nearly defined as concentrating on your ability to deliver the message and not on the actual message. So I think nerves will disappear if you really focus on what do these people want? What can I give them here today? And if you're focusing totally with that big spotlight, face the other direction, focused on the audience, your nerves will disappear.
From your experience, where do people go wrong in relation to public speaking?
I think they go wrong in trying to maybe put too much into it. They go wrong by not maybe illustrating what they're saying, by hiding behind stats and figures. And if you listen to an interview on the radio and somebody is talking about my quarter one sales and my turnover and my metrics and my measurements and my stats and you're just glazing over, you're not listening. Whereas if that same person tells their business story in terms of, do you know how I started up my business? I was sitting there at the kitchen table one day and herself said to me, what we need is, and you're automatically relating to that man. You're in his kitchen table with him. You're listening to the story. You're listening to how this product was designed. And you actually stay with them because it's so personal. But I think in a business sense, we sometimes think we've got to wear that business hat and we've got to speak in this formal tone. And we don't. What you have to be is be yourself, but be your business-like self, but be absolutely yourself and let your personality out of the box. But that takes a bit of confidence and it takes a bit of practice. I would suggest to anybody, get up there and practice. Get some miles on your clock. Stand up at the rugby club and say the few words at the end of the dinner. In the tennis club, at Granny's retirement party. If you've never stood up and said a few words in public, well, get up and do it in the next month or so. Make it your business to say, I'm going to stand up and do some speaking. I say this to women a lot particularly. Women are inclined to nudge himself and say, oh, you say the few words. And I'm always saying to women, and women in business particularly, start practicing how you speak. Get up on your hind legs and make that speech. Start talking to people, start communicating, because it'll just do you so much good and you'll feel so good about it.
You mentioned earlier your involvement with some of the projects that Gavin has invested on the Dragon's Den itself. I know it's starting again tomorrow night on RTE1. What can we expect from this season's Dragon's Den?
Well, I think it's going to be a really exciting Dragon's Den, and I was there in the wings on quite a number of the days. There was a lot of investments made. I think it's going to be a really good one. Despite the downturn, there's a lot of fantastic people out there putting great ideas together and looking for the supports for them. And going on Dragon's Den is one way of getting those supports around you. So I think it's going to be a very exciting programme. We've had the privilege, I have to say, and the pleasure over the last 2 or 3 years of working with some fabulous companies that have emerged through Dragon's Dragon's Den. One of them from this part of the world is Kate Hyde. She was in the Dunhill Business Park, but I think now she's in the Riverside Business Park. She set up a company called henparty.ie, and she was somebody who noticed that there were an awful lot of businesses around the whole wedding industry, but not around hen party. And she came into the Den, made a fabulous presentation. She's a feisty redhead, and she's just a great person. You'd buy her as much as you'd buy her product. And Gavin and Niall invested in her. Her turnover that first year was €8,000. So it wasn't exactly the most mega business on the day 3 years ago, but it was Kate. As I said, she was such a dynamic person and a fantastic worker. Kate's turnover this year is on track to be 1 million.
That's a great success story. What has the key to the success been for Kate?
I think in her case it has been absolute graft and hard work, and knowing her stuff. She was a business graduate, and then she did the whole SEO online piece as well. She added that to her qualifications later. She's very expert in this area. She spotted a niche in the market. She put the machinery behind it in terms of the online thing. She knew that had to work, and it had to work well. And she is just a grafter. She works every hour God sends, and there's no easy way to do this. The only place they say success comes before work is in the dictionary. Work must come first, and she is an example of somebody. On her honeymoon, Kate was saying to her husband, "Off you go down to the pool, dear. I'll follow you down in a few minutes." And as soon as he was out of the room, she was whipping out the laptop and doing a few more little bits and pieces on her site. So, I'm a great respecter and a great believer in hard work. Of course, there's talent, and there's initiative, and there's ability, and there's luck, and there's a whole load of other things that come around you. But I think the central principle here is hard work.
Orla, it's been very inspirational speaking to you today, and I wish you the best of luck on Wednesday next in the Kilcannon Garden Centre, where you're going to be making a presentation on behalf of Wexford County Enterprise Board entitled Life's a Pitch. Thank you for joining me this morning.
Welcome back to South East Radio's Business Matters, with thanks to Wexford Insurances. Wexford Insurances. All your insurance needs dealt with on 0818 31 30 30.